New bike day is the best. And whether you're a seasoned veteran chasing N+1 or you're new to the sport looking to make your first purchase, the allure of buying a new bike is undeniable. But sadly, so is the hefty price tag. Thankfully though, purchasing a pre-owned bike can not only save you a lot of money, but can also help save the planet by giving that bike a second lease on life. But the process of finding, inspecting, and purchasing said bike is a lot more tricky than just plucking one off the shelf at your local bike shop. And this is where we come in. In this video, I'm going to give you 5 tips to make sure you end up with your dream bike and not just some clapped out lemon. But before we do that, let me know down there in the comments what other videos you'd like to see us do on the channel. And if you haven't done so already, go ahead and hit the thumbs up button to like this video. Now let's get into it with the first step, which is doing your research. And by watching this video, you are already well on your way to doing that research you need to do to make sure that this process goes well for you. But there's a few other things I want to cover. First up, you need to figure out what category of bike you want to get, what price range you're looking for, and what features and specifications you want that bike to come with. The bike industry changes quickly, so many of those part spec, geometry, and even bike standards change relatively quickly. And for that reason, we don't recommend purchasing a bike over about 5 years old. In the mountain bike world, that's going to lead to some pretty outdated geometry, which will make it harder to keep up with your buddies on more modern bikes. And in the road bike world, bikes built before around 2018 are not going to have frame clearance to fit the wider tires that most cyclists now use, and are likely not going to come with the modern hydraulic disc brakes that you'll find on a newer bike. Our website, 99spokes.com, can be a good tool to see how the used bikes that you're looking for compare to their newer contemporaries. You can go ahead and add each bike to our comparison feature and see side by side what the geometry looks like, what the part spec looks like, and get a good idea for how those two bikes are going to ride differently in the real world. So once you've figured out what category you're looking for and what sort of geometry and standards you want to make sure you find on that bike, it's time to move on to step 2, which is doing your purchasing. And we highly recommend using a vetted, trustworthy classifieds network. Something like Facebook Marketplace, Bicycle, or the Pink Bike Classifieds ads. This will help protect you from scams, as you can verify the seller's authenticity via their profile. But even when using a website like this, you're not completely protected. And that's why we highly recommend never purchasing a bike sight unseen and having it shipped to you. Instead, you should go there and chat with the owner, take a look at the bike, and pay them face to face versus sending money over. Now, if you're looking for a very specific used bike, then yes, you may end up in a situation where you have to purchase the bike without ever seeing it and send them the money before receiving the bike. If that's the case, you should use a payment system that has buyer protection built into it, something like PayPal Goods and Services. Now, speaking of buying used bikes and having them shipped directly to you, there is one other type of used bike marketplace that I want to talk about, and that is buying from a certified pre-owned distributor. A common example of this is the Pro's Closet, Bicycle, and Bike Exchange. Similar to buying a certified pre-owned car, these bikes tend to be a bit more expensive than buying on the open marketplace, but have been looked over and tuned up by a professional mechanic, and will often come with some kind of 30 to 60 day guarantee just to make sure that that bike doesn't crap out right from the get-go. Once you've researched the type of bike you want to get and you've found it on your favorite classifieds network, step 3 to getting the best pre-owned bike is to verify the authenticity of it. And the best way to do this is to have the seller send you a picture of the serial number. This is usually found on the bottom of the bottom bracket shell, but on some bikes it might be in different places. If they're not sure where it is, you can do a quick Google search and have them send that photo to you. Once you've done that, hop over to bikeindex.com and do a search with your serial number. That will pull up if the bike's been reported as stolen or there's any other kind of wonky stuff going on that could pass on to you if you happen to buy that bike. Another thing that you want to make sure is that the seller isn't trying to screw you over by maybe stripping off some of the higher quality parts that the bike came with and replacing it with lower quality stuff. A good way to do that is to once again head over to 99spokes.com and do a quick search for the bike you're looking for. If you find that the parts that the bike was supposed to come with are significantly different than what the seller has on the bike right now, and they haven't already made you aware of that, it can be a bit of a red flag. One thing it could mean is that the bike was involved in a pretty bad wreck, and so there could be some frame damage. The other thing is that, like I said earlier, the seller might just be trying to rip you off by taking off higher quality parts to keep for themselves or sell later on, and replacing it with lower quality replacements. But if that verification process goes smoothly, it's time to move on to step number 4, which is to do a physical inspection for any damage or wear on the bike. And it should go without saying that this is going to be pretty hard to do if you're not there in person looking at the bike yourself, which is again just another reason why we don't recommend buying a used bike without being there in person. Now, inspecting a bike for damage can look pretty different between different categories of bikes and frame materials and part spec. And for that reason, if you don't already have a decent grasp on some basic bicycle mechanics, we recommend bringing a more experienced rider or even a mechanic along with you to take a look at this bike. That said, here's a quick summary of some of the things you should check out. First up is the overall impression. Is it clean? Does it look like it's been well taken care of? Ask the last time it was serviced and how long the owner has had the bike and why they're selling it. These broader, more general questions can give you a good idea of what this bike's life has looked like before you got there, and that can make a pretty big difference into how long you can expect this bike to last into the future. Next, you should inspect the frame. If it's metal, check for rust, dents, and cracks on the welds. If it's carbon fiber, check for dings and nicks on the surface. If it's a full suspension bike, gently wiggle the frame to check for any play, indicating worn bearings that you'll have to replace down the road. From there, you should check out the wheels and tires. Look for dents in the rim, wobbles as you spin the wheel, and any kind of side-to-side play or rough or non-freely spinning wheels, as this can be a sign of bearing wear. While you're there, it's not a bad idea to inspect the tires. Obviously, tires are a wear item, but it doesn't hurt if you're buying a used bike that already has some pretty solid tires on there. Another good thing to look at is the brakes. If the bike has hydraulic disc brakes that feel spongy or have a long lever pull, this can mean that they either need new pads, a bleed, or both. Rim brakes are a little easier to inspect and work on, but it's not a bad idea to see how much material is left on that pad and about how long you can expect to ride it before replacing those brake pads. Lastly, if your bike has suspension, you want to take a look at that fork and shock. First up, check for oil leaking out of the seals, and more importantly, check for any kind of scratches on the stanchions, as that's something that can't be repaired and can often mean that you need to replace the fork or the shock. And that's the last thing you want to do when you're trying to get a good deal on a used bike. Once you've finished your visual inspection, it's time to take the bike on a test ride. This is another good opportunity to test those brakes, to see how the drivetrain's performing, to check for any weird creaks or sounds or rubbing that seem out of place. And remember that, a professional mechanic can probably take care of a lot of these issues, but we're trying to save money. We don't want to buy a used bike and then have to dump $500 into making it rideable. And speaking of a professional mechanic, that is our 5th and final step. Regardless of how your inspection goes, it's not a bad idea to take it to your local bike shop and have somebody look it over. There's a good chance they're going to be able to get your new bike riding pretty dang close to new again, and they'll be able to catch any things that you might have missed on your own inspection for any damage or wear, and give you an idea of what it's going to cost to replace or fix that. Now, if you're new to the sport and don't yet have a relationship with a local bike shop, ask the people you plan to ride with in the future, or hop on Google and do a quick search, because it's really important that you build that relationship early on, as there's a good chance you're going to be in there getting your bike worked on and purchasing new accessories and gear down the road. Buying a used bike isn't easy, and what started out as a way to save yourself some money could end up ripping you off if you're not careful. But if you follow these steps, I can all but guarantee you're gonna end up with a rad, new to you bike and a few extra dollars left in your pocket. If you have any more questions about purchasing used bikes, or maybe about a particular used bike you are trying to purchase, go ahead and drop those in the comments and I'll be sure to answer those. And while you're down there, if you haven't already, go ahead and click that subscribe button to subscribe to the 99 Spokes YouTube channel, where we'll be uploading a new cycling related video every Friday. Lastly, remember that bikes are for everybody. Have fun out there.